Hey guys, I'm out working on the garage workshop. I have plans to kind of rearrange and reorganize stuff in here, but it's a really small space that I've kind of settled into. So that's more of an endeavor than it looks like on first glance. I had a bunch of landscaping stuff, lawnmower, everything up in the front, but we put a shed in the back, so all that's out of here. So I spent the day kind of getting rid of some stuff on Marketplace and cleaning it out and just kind of starting to begin that process of reorganizing. But I have a new Liquid Logic mullet hull here, and I have the outfitting out of the old one. And today I'm going to try and get it in there. I don't know if I have enough contact cement, but I can at least get this in there and show you a little bit more about my outfitting. So I'll turn the camera around and we'll get started. All right, so we're working with a mullet or a warranted mullet hull here. I already have the grab loop switched over from the old one. It is a kayak hull, meaning that they've already drilled it. They no longer make the mullet for production, and so their only stock is warranty hulls, and they're all pre-drilled for kayak outfitting. That actually works well for me because my C1 outfitting uses most of the stock kayak outfitting holes. So the bulkhead holes up here mount to my cross brace, and then my hip pads bolt to the seat bolts here. The only ones, the thigh brace ones, I don't use, and I just put a piece of Gorilla Tape on them. I could weld them closed, but with a piece of Gorilla Tape on both sides, it doesn't leak, and I've never really had a problem with it. I use the stock kayak pillars, and then I use the factory rail as well. So what I have here is 3 yardsticks from Harbor Freight, and these are they're like $3 each, and I use 2 of them, and they're mounted this way to stiffen the factory rail. I've used just the factory rail, and it tends to flex a whole lot. So you can see that even this is starting to buckle a little bit from the amount of force that my thighs put on it. But I use 1 up front, and that goes to my factory bulkhead bolts and stops the front from shifting side to side. And then I don't actually use 1 in the back because the hip pads keep me really well centered in the boat. So I don't really have too much of an issue sliding around between. The back actually slides under the pillar here, and the pillar has these nice channels kind of holding it in place. So again, that's not really a big problem. Actually, before I get this in here, I want to talk a little bit about this outfitting in particular. The straps I made out of a 2-inch nylon webbing, and then some padding that all barely fit in my sewing machine, but it works pretty well. The ratchets are IR backband ratchets, and I really like them because this quick release will work just by this alone. And some of the snowboard ratchets, it's a two-part release where you have to push it forward and then flip it back. And so I don't want to have to deal with that while underwater. And I like this to work as a backup in case, for whatever reason, my main quick release were to fail. The main quick release is a 2-inch metal dive buckle, and then it has 2 1-inch straps going into it. The metal dive buckles are the only buckles that I personally had that don't slip. The plastic ones, they always slip out. And so I've added a tri-glide in there to redirect the strap into it, like what you have on your PFD. But I've broken every tri-glide that I've tried there. And I actually had one on this, and then that tri-glide broke, but the metal buckle held, and I paddled out the rest of the day with just the metal buckle, and I've used it ever since, and it hasn't slipped. So I'm pretty confident in this. But it should be noted that this 1-inch webbing is very substantial. It's the thickest stuff I have. I have a couple different colors, and none of them are this thick. It's almost twice the thickness of like an NRS strap. And I don't know where you get it, but I have it, and it bites really well in there. Another thing to consider is you really don't want these tails to be too long, because once this cam opens and they're dragging out, if they were to catch the teeth of the buckle, it could actually cam closed again. So you want these short so they just pull right out. I have a D-ring in the middle, and this redirects each thigh strap straight into this buckle. If they went in straight without that D-ring, they'd both go in at an angle, and that would want the straps to cross on their way out once this deployed. And again, that could catch this and pull it shut again. To mount the buckles to the straps, I'm using these T-nuts. T-nuts are for like hammering into wood. They have these little teeth that bite, and so it's really, really secure. And both there. I've also filed down any extra threads poking out or anything so that it doesn't catch my leg or wear on anything. The straps are just a 2-inch webbing I made. And I have a tri-glide on the back here for some adjustability. Don't actually need this. In fact, I could just measure it now. I have all the adjustability I need up here, and then just drill through here instead. And in fact, that looks like it's on its way out. So even 2-inch webbing with big fender washers. You can see this is quadruple stitched, and it's starting to pull out. I did another video showing how I do this. I actually glaze this with a blowtorch to kind of melt the fibers together. But even so, it still starts to pull. I use the factory hole and the hip pads to mount this side. Yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. Just a piece of all thread here to hold the buckle in the front. You can see part of the old tri-glide that broke there. But quick release, just a nice big piece of polypropylene floating rope. It would flop around in there and give me something to snag and pop out. And that's it. The pedestal is out of an old, I don't know, caption or something. Some whitewater Royalex boat. It sat outside in a yard for years and was nibbled on by all sorts of rodents. But it's been in 3 boats now and works pretty well for me. I like a really tall backrest, especially on something with a slightly slicey stern. And that allows for when I'm vertical, I don't slip backwards out of my thigh straps. But that being said, I really like to have flex to it. My not big boy, Super Easy, has a really thick block and there's almost no flex to it. And so that balance point, I can't move my torso to counteract it enough, and I tend to flop a lot more. Whereas this one flexes with my body a lot. And it keeps me from sliding out, but still allows me the range of motion necessary to hold a long stern squirt. And then I just glued a bunch of chunks of foam in here, to fit around the factory pillar and hold it in place. So let me put the phone on a tripod and show you how this goes in there. All right, excuse me, pup here. There's a bit of a trick to getting this in here. First, I gotta kind of twist this front bulkhead and twist this cross brace. And I actually have to slide it further forward to get the back in. And then once the back is in, I can kind of twist that and turn that. I've done that many times, so it's much easier after a bunch of practice. But now I'll bolt my cross brace to the factory holes there. These guys get bolted there. I need my hip pads, which bolt into the side as well. So let me get some hardware and we'll start doing that. Alright, for hardware I'm using, I think it's 1/4 20 stainless steel bolts, and these are Phillips head, and they give me a nice smooth profile that's not going to damage the skirt or anything. Nylon lock nuts, 2 big fender washers, one on the inside, one on the outside, and I like to use a rubber washer on the outside. For the front, I'm using the same thing. They're a little bit shorter, and for this hole. And they just have a very small washer on there. And you can see there's some sealant on here. I'm going to use, what's this stuff called? OSI. It's a urethane adhesive. And I'm going to put this on all the heads of all of these on the outside to seal it up. And then these will also get a fender washer on the inside of that bracket. Something a lot of people don't know is there's actually different sizes of Phillips head. And I hate Phillips head. I prefer a Torx or something, but this is readily available in stainless. So, let's see. So there's P1, 2, and 3. I don't know if you can see this, but the tips are pretty substantially different. If you use the wrong size, it'll strip out. So here's a P2 that I've used. You can see that's stripped, or sometimes it'll strip the hardware itself. Now stainless is pretty soft, so these are really easy to strip as well. But these are actually P3, and so you really want to use the right size Phillips head to get the most bite on there without breaking your screwdriver or stripping your hardware. I now use this one to heat up and burn holes in my strap, but yeah. So I'll take out my P3, leave in my P2 and P1. And we'll go from there. Like I said, I'm going to put all these in with a dab of that urethane sealant adhesive stuff. And that'll seal. Oh, I forgot. I have to drill a hole in the back. I actually like this mounted, my thigh straps. I like it mounted behind my hip. It goes over my whole leg and it's much more secure. I originally had a thwart in the first mullet I had that went across the back, and I used that to stop this from shifting side to side, and that's where I mounted my thigh straps too. So I was thinking about drilling a hole here because the second hole I had, I drilled the hole and then decided not to reinstall the thwart because it was catching my ankle on the way out. But now that I think about it, I don't think I actually even have to do that. I'm going to use these. Before I said I used these, and that wasn't actually true. The way these are set up was back here. But ideally, one of the issues I have with all my boats with straps is that I cannot wet exit without pulling the quick release or releasing these. And so because of that, I really am just not comfortable creaking or doing anything with a high pin potential in these boats. But I'd really love to take this down the upper yacht. So I'm wondering if I can mount this further forward, and then that this is high enough to keep me in the boat while upside down, and then this will be lower down my leg so I could potentially wet exit without pulling that strap. So I'm going to measure this, and I think I'm going to fold this over and actually mount it up front and see. I think I'm also going to take these out and add a little keeper here because these like to flex up, and I want them managed a little bit better. So right, we're trying to improve on each iteration, and so hopefully these are improvements on the last one. All right, you could see how much trouble that gave me. When I cut it, it's basically flush along the side of the boat. And like I said, this is to stop this from sliding side to side. But the other thing is that without the seat and stuff, the kayak seat, I worry about the structure of the boat itself. So that adds a little bit more structure. Kind of takes the place of the bulkhead and the seat pan. So I want it as close to the hull as possible, and I'm also going to glue foam over it, so I want it as flush as possible because of that too. So now I'll get these thigh straps and hip pads in. And like I said, these are just a piece of old hull that I heated up and bent in the vise, and then I drilled holes to match the holes on the side. Alright, I'll do the other side, and then we'll hop in and test it. Alright, so I threw the old foam back in there just to save my ankles. But let's give this a shot. It appears as if my hips might have gone a little wider since last summer. So none of the foam is glued in. And I sewed my straps a little too short. Alright, I might burn another hole and move the straps in a little bit, especially for winter layers, because right now I'm just wearing almost a bathing suit material. But that feels pretty good. But I think I could still get out of it, which is game changing. Once these are glued in, that'll help lock me in a little bit more and give me something to push against. But they're on the front bolt of my hip pads, so I can move them back a little bit. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to adjust these so they come in another, let's say, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Just, I mean, that's really where the bulk of the force is. Oh, maybe I'll try it as is. That bothers me a little bit, but oh well. Yeah, I'm going to move these in just so that these are captured and not poking up into my skirt. And that's pretty exciting. I'll have to go stir and squirt and see if I fall out backwards and practice a wet exit. But you can see with these, all I have to do is push it and they release, as opposed to the double mechanism, which I've used at some point. But this is pretty good. All right, now I got to glue foam in. I'll adjust those a little bit, and we should be about done. Okay, I decided to do my foam gluing while I had the straps out to adjust them. I also pulled the saddle out because it was a little loose, and it'll give me better access to glue all this stuff down. The old foam got kind of messed up pulling it out, but I'm going to use it as a template to cut some new pieces and get them glued out. You can see I use a Sharpie and just kind of roughed out the area so I know where to put contact cement. I could rough that all up with some sandpaper to really get a good connection, but I think if I do 2 or 3 good coats, it'll be fine. That's what I did with this one, and I had to use a putty knife to get this stuff up. So yeah, the foam that I'm using is this 4-piece anti-fatigue foam mat set from Harbor Freight. It's whatever, almost half an inch. With a coupon, it's like $7 or $8 for a sheet of 4 or 4 sheets of it that are 2x2. And I buy a few of these at a time when I go there because I use them so much. You can stack them and use them as hip pads. You can use them as shims and ankle blocks. It's really the cheapest mini cell foam that I've found, and this is the #1 source that I use. I think it's a good thickness for knee pads. It's a little bit more dense than the stuff that you get in like an open boat. The saddles are made out of, but I think it's just because of the texture. They put it in some kind of press or something, but it works fine for me. And I like to foam from my knees to my toes, and that really is nice and cushy for my whole shin and everything. So I'm gonna bust out the contact cement is Weldwood. They changed their label a bit. This is the old label. The original, it comes in a gel formula too. I like actually I like either one. It works. The gel is actually a little bit easier to work with. It's less messy, but they didn't have that today when I went to get some more. So what I'll do is I actually cut off a piece of this foam to use as a squeegee, and I'll spread out a couple coats on here. I'll do a coat, let it dry, do a second coat, let it dry, and then I'll cut these pieces to match those. And on the back of them, I'll do 2 coats and let it dry. And then we will squish them in. And then for the saddle, I'm actually going to smear it along the sides and on here. And I like to do that. I'll probably let tack up. Actually, no, because I have to slide this under the back. So I'll actually do a wet application there where I just smear a ton in there, wedge this in place, and then I'll use some wood blocks and stuff to lock that down, let it sit for a day and dry out. Jeremy's done a couple different experiments, and I think that using a couple coats and letting it tack up is the strongest, but there's not really a huge difference between doing wet and letting it dry. It's just the time period in between being able to use it. You have to let it sit for a couple days and off gas all the solvent in there before getting it wet. But it held fine for a long time. So, and it'll be wedged under there. There's not really a force. I mean, unless I'm out of the boat and the boat's getting chundered, that's gonna let this rip out once it's glued down. So let me get gluing. Probably not gonna film that. Maybe I'll film a little bit, just show you what I mean and how I use the contact cement. But we'll go from there. So I use this scrap of foam, and I like it because it has these ridges. It works kind of like a grout trowel to get a nice uniform thickness. So I'll cover this whole piece. And then let it dry. I'll do it again and do the same thing twice on the inside of the boat. And then once those touch, that'll be it. All right, we're nice and tacky. Tacky is, it sticks to your finger, but nothing comes off on your finger. Same thing in the boat. Unfortunately, don't think I'm going to be able to do this part on camera, because once this touches that, it doesn't move. So I have to do some finagling and carefully get it in there, because only get one shot at this one. All right, we got our saddle in. Like I said, I did this wet so that I could slide it in. And I put a whole lot of contact cement in there. And then I just used a bunch of shims and some blocks to really wedge it down. And I'll let that sit for probably a day or two. Front blocks, I did my normal way, letting it a couple coats, nice and tacky, push them in. They're really rigid now. So that's it. All I have to do is reinstall my thigh straps and double check them. I'll do that tomorrow, and then it's a wet test. We'll see if I fall out of it with the new straps anchored to here instead of back here. hold me in. I think with the hip pads and the tall back that I was further back. I used the same holes for the thwart when I had it, and I just don't need that anymore. So I'm pretty excited to try it up here because I know there's a point further than that you're going to slip out, further back than that, and it's an entrapment hazard. So it's about time I played with the straps a little more and found a safer alternative to the way I've been having it. So I guess I'll wrap this up and then make another video when it's all done, and maybe I'll get some footage on the water. This weekend I got to do my shakedown. I took it to my local surf spot and just putzed around and got to do some stern squirts and stuff. And I'm happy to report that it worked great. Moving up the hip pad anchor point from there to there seems to be in that sweet spot where I have enough retention and can do everything that I want in terms of control, but I can wiggle out of it without releasing either one of these, which that's really what I've been looking for, and I don't know why I didn't play with it sooner, but yeah, I mean, I'll have to try in different boating layers to see if anything slips. These might slide down and it might get a little less tight, but we'll see. As is right now, I'm super happy with it. It seems to be better all around, and really excited to not worry so much about dying by being trapped in my boat. So at some point, maybe I'll get some footage of this on the water, but that's all I got for now.